It is 217 BC, a century after the death of Alexander the Great. His successors still vie for dominance over the once prosperous empire. Over the past 3 years, the Seleucid king Antiochus III has pushed through Syria. Ptolemy IV has gathered an army of natives in an effort to meet him at Raphia. With the country in crisis, he knows that defeat would mean nothing less than the end of his dynasty in Egypt. Antiochus, conqueror of Syria, and his Seleucid army, now marches on Egypt. Ptolemy has amassed a large and varied force to meet the Seleucid threat. However, Ptolemy's Atlas elephants are panicked by the larger Indian breed commanded by Antiochus. They will not bear being close to them in the coming battle. Ptolemy must be victorious at Raphia, or his kingdom will surely fall.
All right, so good morning, everybody. I know it's quite late in London. I'm not doing a video today, just to give you a brief summary of what we'll be having much later today, on Saturday actually. The reason for this video is because I understand that a lot of you don't know the history behind the Maccabean revolt, the history behind Antiochus, the history behind Alexander the Great. I understand that this is not explicit in the Bible, but it has been prophesied in advance. So what you call the silent year, the 400 years silent year in the Bible between the Old Testament and the New Testament wasn't really silent. It was a time of war. It was a time of betrayal. You understand that back in the Bible there, you had Alexander. He had his 4 generals, and I said to you the last time in chapter number 8 of the book of Daniel, how he gave his kingdom to 4 guys, and these 4 guys you could call them his generals. And before he died on his sick bed, they asked him, who do you want the kingdom to go to? And he says, give the kingdom to the strongest. I said to you the last time, he had 4 guys: Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. And I said to you that Cassander took Macedonia and Greece. Lysimachus took Thrace, Bithynia, and most of Asia Minor. You have Ptolemy and Seleucus. Ptolemy and Seleucus took Egypt. Ptolemy took Egypt, Cyrene, Arabia, and Petrae. And Seleucus took Syria and through the land of Egypt. The reason why this is important is because chapter number 11 of the book of Daniel, as we'll be sharing much later today, is a battle between two cities, 2 nations, between the south and the north. And when I mean the south, I'm talking about Ptolemy, and when I mean the north, I'm talking about Seleucus. And the north consists of Egypt and Babylon, while the south consists of Israel and Syria. So chapter number 11 of the book of Daniel is actually a book that talks about the war of these 2 empires. Most of you don't realize where Herod came from. Who is Herod? Who are the Parthians? Who are Pompey? What is Pompey? All this Bible history. There are things that you don't really know in the New Testament. All of a sudden, you never found them in the Old Testament. You never found anyone called Herod. Who was Herod? Who were the zealots? Who were these guys? What is the meaning of the Septuagint? So these are things that you don't find in the you find it in the New Testament, but you don't have an understanding. The 400-year period that we call the silent year, it is a mistranslation. It is not silent. It is a time of war. Okay, it is not silent. It is a time of empires and kingdoms. It was actually very wild. So this is the little picture of what you've seen. We'll talk about Cassandra tomorrow. We'll talk about Cleopatra. Who is Cleopatra? Who is Antiochus? Who is Ptolemy? Philadelphus? Who are these guys? There are Bible guys that you don't understand. And that is the reason why I believe that there is no way you can understand chapter 11 without a bit of history. Because what you call the silent year was prophesied in advance. And we understand that. Now, my frustration would be that because you don't have an understanding of the Bible history of what happened, it will be difficult. So I've tried as much as possible. Watch the video again. And I know there are not much things to say in the video, but watch towards the end of the video and you will see what I'm talking about. I believe this part of the video, yes, from this part, watch this part, you will see what we're talking about. Watch. Antiochus abandoned Syria, Judea, and Phoenicia. See that? This land would continue to be fought over by the 2 empires. And what do I mean by that? These lands will continue to be fought over by the 2 empires. Literally, Israel is in the middle of the north and the south. Israel is in the Middle East, so the middle belt. So basically, the south, which is Ptolemy, the north, which is Seleucus, they are in constant battle, and this constant battle is because of the good land. And when you look at chapter number 11 in the book of Daniel, it talks about the good land. When you hear the word good land, it speaks of Israel. So the reason why these 2 nations are fighting is because of the good land. That's what it says here. These lands would continue to be fought over by the two empires. What land? The good land. And that is what we have even today. The good land is being fought over. And that's the reason why we don't believe in anti-Semitism. We believe there's a reason why God gave them the land. In chapter number 12 of the book of Genesis, God gave Abraham. God said this land will be called your land. And we understand even in the Bible time before the New Testament that, PTELOMY and SELEUCUS, we have seen fighting because of this land. What is the reason why they're fighting for this land? We understand 4 covenants given to Israel. We understand the Abrahamic covenant, then we understand the Palestinian covenant. The Palestinian covenant is called the land covenant, and this is an unconditional covenant. God gave Israel 4 unconditional covenants. The first one is called the Abrahamic covenant. And the problem with the Abrahamic covenant is that it is anti-Semitism. People keep fighting about it and keep fighting against Israel. The next promise God gave them was called the Palestinian or land covenant. And this is the land covenant that has been fought from time. Even in the Bible time, even in Daniel chapter number 11, they've been fighting the land, the north and the south. Egypt and Syria has been fighting over this good land. Then we have what you call the Davidic covenant, and finally the everlasting covenant. These are 4 unconditional covenants the Lord gave to Israel. Once you understand this, your theology changes. Now, so what it says here, this land would continue to be fought over by the 2 empires. What are the 2 empires? The south and the north. PTELOMY and SELEUCUS. Until 63 BC, when Pompey, I told you about Pompey. Most of you don't know whom Pompey is. Until Pompey the Great, there were different types of Pompey. Pompey the Great would lead an army and bring Syria. Now, Pompey the Great was Roman. He was Roman. Now, remember, I told you before that it was a war between the north and the south, between Egypt and Syria. All of a sudden, we have Rome. Why Rome? Because Rome conquered Greece. Rome conquered Greece. That's the reason. So until 63 BC, when Pompey, who was a Roman, led an army and bring Syria and Judah under the Roman jurisdiction. So once you understand the dream of Nebuchadnezzar, when he had a dream of the head of gold, which represents Babylon, the chest of silver, which represent Persia and Media, the belly of bronze, which represent Greece, and finally the feet of iron and clay, which represent Rome. And I told you that everyone got destroyed from an external source apart from Rome. And you understand these, that in 63 BC, Pompey the Great, he was a Roman general. What did he do? He brought Syria. And where was Syria? You see that? He brought Syria and Judea. Judea, actually the Middle East, and Syria. Syria is actually under the custody of PTELOMY. See how amazing it is? So he brought Syria, which is actually in the south. Syria, the south, under Roman jurisdiction. This was the time of Jesus' birth. You see, what you call the silent here in chapter 11 or between Malachi and Matthew wasn't silent. This was prophesied in advance. So once you have a strong biblical account, historical account of this, then I won't have a problem with you tomorrow or later today. The reason why I have a problem with you, right, guys, is because you cannot understand history just looking at the scripture. So there were extra biblical tales, there were things, history, and I said to you before we started the book of Daniel, go get Josephus and get the history, Herodotus, get their books and understand the history at a time. So until 63 BC, when Pompey the Great would lead an army and bring Syria and Judea under Roman jurisdiction, this was the time of Jesus when the Romans ruled. How come Pompey is coming? Pompey came on board. Why? Because the Romans conquered the Greeks. The Roman conquered the Greeks. That's the Greeks. That's the reason why Pompey came. You see, the Persian conquered the Babylonians. The Greeks conquered the Persians. And Rome conquered Greece. This is the war at the time. So once you understand this, it opens your mind to a fresh revelation. Why the Eastern Persian? I said to you the last time that when Greece conquered Persia, they did not conquer the eastern leg of Persia. The eastern leg of Persia is called the Parthians, and the Parthians were responsible for commemorating kings. These were the ones you call Magi. Many of you call them the wise men. The 3 wise men, they were not wise men, they were magistrates. The word magistrate is from the word, they were the Levitical priests from the Eastern Persian Empire. The Levitical priests from the Eastern Persian Empire, they were not conquered by the Greeks. They were the one who came to Bethlehem at Jerusalem and said to Herod, "Where is he who is born King of the Jews?" The reason why Herod was afraid, the reason why all of Bethlehem was shaking and Jerusalem was shaking was because these guys came to crown Jesus as king. So understand the historical accounts. It will give you a fresher view. You will hear more about Cleopatra. You will hear more about the arranged marriage of a 10-year-old child and Bernice. Who is Bernice? The daughter of who? So you understand it was actually to make power reign within the kingdoms that the Seleucus and PTELOMYs, they had to marry themselves just to rule power within them. Understand this. And finally, on this note, Jesus was born in the era of Herod. He was born in the Roman cusp. It was in the Roman time, in the Roman power. And I say to you every time, all when I started the teaching from chapter number 1, that all of the kingdoms, all of the empires, they were conquered. I say to you, Babylon did not, there's a difference between the doom of Babylon and the fall of Babylon. Babylon fell but was not destroyed. And I say to you, Ugbaru came in and they conquered Babylon. Why? They receded the water from the river Tigris. And because of that, they came into the land, they came into the town, they came into the city, and they conquered Babylon. By the time Belshazzar, who was the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, now his father was called Nebuchadnezzar. Now, that was the time that the Persians came and conquered Babylon. They did not destroy Babylon. Babylon was not destroyed. The reason why is because there is a difference between the doom of Babylon and the fall of Babylon. There is the future doom of Babylon. You find that in the book of Revelation. You understand what the Bible calls the mystery Babylon. You find out in Revelation. Spend time to look at Revelation 12 and 13. You will hear the word the mystery Babylon. So a lot of time when theologians look at the scripture, they call the fall of Babylon as the doom. No, Babylon was not destroyed. Babylon was not scattered. Babylon was only captured by the what? By the Persians and the Medians. And when they conquered Darius and Cyrus, they made Babylon their seat of authority. Understand this? It was not destroyed. There was no destruction. Babylon has not been destroyed. Babylon, it was captured, not destroyed. But guess what? Everyone who came, the Persian conquered Babylon. Then Greece conquered Persia. Guess what? Rome conquered Greece, but nobody conquered Rome. Why? Because Rome will play a major role in the end time. And when I'm talking about Rome, I'm not talking about the Eastern Europe, like you know. I'm not talking about the Western Europe. I'm talking about the Eastern Europe. Most of you don't realize why Constantine took the headquarters of Rome to where he took it, to the eastern part, to Syria. There are a lot of things you understand from eschatological teachings. But today, I just want you to understand that you cannot understand Daniel 11 without a bit of history. I believe this has blessed you. I'm not showing my face because I don't want to do a live teaching today, right? So this is me saying to you, watch the video again and you will understand why it was. I'll play the video for just about 1 minute. It has the history for 1 minute and I'll be out of your way. God bless you. Have an amazing night and bye.
It is 217 BC, a century after the death of Alexander the Great. His successors still vie for dominance over the once prosperous empire. Over the past 3 years, the Seleucid king Antiochus III has pushed through Syria. Ptolemy IV has gathered an army of natives in an effort to meet him at Raphia. With the country in crisis, he knows that defeat would mean nothing less than the end of his dynasty in Egypt. Antiochus, conqueror of Syria, and his Seleucid army, now marches on Egypt. Ptolemy has amassed a large and varied force to meet the Seleucid threat.
Take that man, he's a disgrace. What's the bloody name and number?
However, Ptolemy's Atlas elephants are panicked by the larger Indian breed commanded by Antiochus. They will not bear being close to them in the coming battle. Ptolemy must be victorious at Raphia, or his kingdom will surely fall.